goal here is that folks that may be homeless today won't be homeless next week.
San Diego's newest homeless shelter opens today, and operators say it represents a new start for hundreds of people currently living on the streets.
I know for sure it has saved the life of one U.S. Army Ranger. We've used it probably about 20 times now since 2013-ish.
The U.S. military is reconstituting an old idea that's saving lives on the battlefield. And we'll check in on December nights. The 40th annual Balboa Park tradition kicks off today with lights, decorations, and music. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening, and thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. After a day of behind-the-scenes negotiations, all but one Republican senator plans to vote for their party's tax reform bill. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell announced he has the 50 votes needed to advance the bill. Tennessee Republican Bob Corker is joining Democrats. He objects to the $1 trillion the plan adds to the federal budget deficit. If the vote goes through as expected, we'll see this process play out all over again. Republicans will have to work out a compromise with the bill passed by the House. The first of 3 new tent bridge shelters opens today in San Diego's East Village. This one will be run by the nonprofit Alpha Project. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman tells us it will house up to 350 men and women a night.
It's a place just to literally detox from survival mode into being a human being mode.
Alpha Project CEO Bob McElroy says this shelter will act as a gateway to permanent housing.
The goal here is that folks that may be homeless today won't be homeless next week.
Friday, the nonprofit opened the first of 3 temporary bridge shelters the city of San Diego is sponsoring. Around 25 women moved in Friday, and they expect to have up to 350 people here by next week.
Those people who have been out there the longest, the most infirmed, the most at risk, will have the first shot of being in here.
Homeless people from the Tent City Campground in Golden Hill will be the first to transfer here, like Terry Wooliver.
I've been doing really good, cleaning, helping out with the Alpha Project.
Wooliver was the first person lined up to get inside the new shelter.
I'm going to be on the bottom buck right on the corner here on the first one.
She says she's been homeless the last year and a half and is looking forward to going from here to her own apartment.
Very lucky to get a second chance. I'm going to do everything I can to do right and follow all the rules and stuff.
People can stay here for up to 120 days, working with case managers to try and better their living situation.
A lot of people here are going to be able to transition out of here, some into housing, some will go home, some will go into treatment programs, some will go to the streets. But the reality is it's a chance for people to start the process.
Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Today is World AIDS Day, a chance to reflect on nearly 4 decades of the HIV epidemic. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says public health officials have applied lessons learned from HIV to the current outbreak of hepatitis A.
Initially, HIV disproportionately affected gay men and IV drug users, 2 groups marginalized by mainstream society. San Diego's Hep A outbreak has also affected people on the fringes, the homeless. Public health officials are pushing a vaccination campaign, but reaching the homeless and gaining their trust is difficult. Terry Cunningham is a retired county health director. He says there are parallels between Hep A and HIV and similar challenges in preventing their spread.
It's amazing to me that we still have so many people who are uneducated about their health, about basic health care precautions. And it holds true still with HIV and with the hepatitis A outbreak.
Public health officials say to prevent the spread of any disease, you have to build trust with the affected populations and meet them where they're at. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
The petition drive that's key to unlocking San Diego State University's access to the city's Mission Valley Stadium site is moving forward. KPBS reporter Eric Anderson has details.
Friends of SDSU hope to collect more than 71,000 valid signatures in support of SDSU West. That measure clears the way for SDSU to buy the city-owned Mission Valley property and build an annex to its campus. Now, steering committee member Steve Doyle says the 5-week-old drive is close to hitting its goal of more than 100,000 signatures. He estimates that's how many raw signatures they need to get enough valid ones. And Doyle says it helps that SDSU unveiled its vision for the site this week.
I thought for a first shot, and that's what it is, a first shot, it was wonderful. I thought it really brought out what the school was trying to get across as far as uses on the property that would help the school grow and continue its presence here in San Diego.
Rival developers FS Investors already have an initiative on the November ballot. Soccer City backers say their legally binding measure uses no public money, while they say SDSU West's plan doesn't offer those same binding commitments. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
At a time when sexual harassment allegations are under intense scrutiny, the state legislature is accused of dragging its feet. The Legislative Open Records Act requires the state House and Senate to comply with any request within 10 days. Print and television outlets have put in requests related to sexual harassment. However, many of the requests have come back late or incomplete.
It's just kind of a smokescreen that gives them say, well, we have an Open Records Act, but it doesn't really work. And they should not be exempted from the same law that they apply to every other public entity in California. That's unfair, it's discriminatory, and it's self-serving, and they shouldn't be able to do that.
The state assembly has spent millions on harassment settlements over the years. An assembly official says it does not keep records of all complaints, only formal investigations. A San Diego-based aircraft carrier is now taking part in airstrikes against ISIS. The USS Theodore Roosevelt departed San Diego in October. It has been training in the Pacific in recent weeks before heading towards the Persian Gulf. The Roosevelt is in its first day of support of the wider mission against ISIS named Operation Inherent Resolve. Despite a congressional mandate, it's taken 2.5 years for the VA to begin issuing ID cards to veterans. Today, I spoke with KPBS military reporter Steve Walsh about whether the program is finally ready. So, Steve, what exactly is this ID?
So the idea seemed pretty simple. Veterans needed an easy way to document their service, so Congress passed a law in 2015 that mandated that the VA create this program. It finally went online just this week.
So why do veterans need an ID?
Well, there's a lot of reasons. Some of it could just be pride, but there's also, we found a lot of money involved here. I talked with Ryan Ganaw. He founded Military Wallet after leaving the Air Force. So he watched the number of companies that offer these discounts really start to balloon over the last decade.
There are so many companies that offer discounts, and it might be something at point of sale. It might just be a couple dollars, or it might be 5% off or 10% off, and it could be just something like a free drink. For some of the bigger discounts, they really want to make sure that you are who you say you are. And again, as I mentioned, that's not always easy to do.
So there's a lot of money at stake, basically.
So what's been the holdup?
Well, the VA has been pretty tight-lipped about this entire process. We know that Congress didn't allocate any money for this, so the VA has gone out and they found a corporate sponsorship, Office Depot. They're going to actually print the cards and send them out to vets. We contacted the company, and that deal has actually not been finalized quite yet. So using corporate sponsorship, though, is unsettling to some vets. I talked with Carl Hunzinger. He's retired from the Air Force. He also works with vets in Florida. He's worried that this card is not going to be taken seriously.
If my retirement ID card had a Home Depot or Office Depot or some logo of some business on the back of it, that just would not sit well with me whatsoever.
It really is kind of a big deal.
So you spoke to Carl, you also spoke to a number of other veterans. Is this something that they really care about? Do you get the sense that they really care and want this card?
Yeah, I really do. I think they do. In fact, we actually went down to the county veterans office and I talked with Adonis Relive. He's a retired naval officer and he's a veteran service officer.
Okay, have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
We do get a lot of calls on that. They just wanted to know when it's going to be because some of them really would like to have this kind of ID.
The card is supposed to allow veterans to avoid carrying around their DD-214, their discharge papers, which lists a wealth of personal information like Social Security numbers. Relive has seen vets who have carried around their DD-214 in their wallet for decades.
And I said, stop it. Don't even open it yet. Because you know what? It may disintegrate. And I've seen that.
Along with military retirees, veterans who receive VA medical care have ID. The law targets that subset of vets who don't fall into any of those categories. States have tried to address that by adding a veterans designation to driver's licenses. In the years since Congress passed the law, the idea spread to nearly every state.
We're going to go to the front office here.
Relive showed me the process for the designation in California.
There is a form here that the veteran will fill out. It says Veteran Status Verification Form.
So you've got to go to Relive and get that form filled out, and then you have to go down to the DMV in person before they'll actually put veteran on your driver's license. So it's pretty secure.
So how's the process work?
All right, so this is what we know about this. So you can apply by going on to va.gov. You have to upload a recent photo and, ironically, a copy of your driver's license. The VA said it should take about 60 days for an actual card to show up. We're already talking to some vets who are having trouble with this completely online process. And the VA hasn't actually done a lot to sell this program to local veterans service organizations or to VSOs like Relive. So there could be a lot of questions in the coming months.
Steve Walsh, thank you so much for giving us this information.
Thanks, Ebony.
All of the U.S. military's special operations fighters now being sent to war zones have freeze-dried blood plasma. It's a powdered product that helps blood to clot, but AP reporter Peter Banda says it hasn't been standard issue for the military in decades.
The U.S. military used it during World War II, dried plasma, to save wounded soldiers from bleeding to death. But the military stopped using it in the 50s after a hepatitis outbreak tainted the blood supply. Decades later, the military's elite fighters are now being sent on raids and to war zones with freeze-dried plasma.
All the liquid is sucked into this bottle here.
Special operations forces carry it, including Marine Raider units. When mixed with water, the yellow powder quickly reconstitutes and can help with clotting.
I know for sure it has saved the life of one U.S. Army Ranger. We've used it probably about 20 times now since 2013-ish.
The life saved? Army Corporal Josh Hargis, who lost both his legs when he stepped on a landmine in Kandahar, Afghanistan in 2013.
You know, my hand hurt a little bit. I've had some lacerations from the explosion. And really, I was more concerned with my hand than my legs because that was what I could feel.
Medic Sergeant Brian Anderson knew Hargis was in serious trouble.
For lack of a better term, he got, the book thrown at him. He got my whole bag, anything I had that I could use on Josh, I was using. He could have gone either way, and he was riding that line. And so that's where it's really nice to have products like freeze-dried plasma.
The military currently gets its dried plasma from the French military. Now, the Army is working with American company Teleflex to win Food and Drug Administration approval to develop it domestically. Unlike frozen plasma, it doesn't require refrigeration or a slow thawing process.
Since it's in a powder form and we only have to reconstitute with water, we can do that within about 2-minute duration versus 25 to 35 minutes.
Congress is looking at whether to give the Pentagon the ability to circumvent the FDA and approve new medical devices and drugs to treat troops. But some lawmakers have raised concerns, and the issue is still up for debate, but not for Hargis. The canine handler lost 4 members of his unit during the raid, along with his dog Yanni, whose ashes he keeps at his home.
I have a wife that I'm glad that I get to be with, and she was a month and a half pregnant with our first son. So I'm really glad that I was able to be around to be a part of all of that.
The makers of the powdered plasma see future uses for it, including in emergency rooms and by first responders. Peter Banda, Associated Press, Peyton, Colorado.
The state will spend more than $1 million to clean up illegal marijuana grow sites in Northern California. The concern has less to do with crime and more to do with protecting animal habitats. The Department of Fish and Wildlife says these grow operations often leave hazardous waste and impact water sources needed by trout, salmon, and other fish.
Clear-cut land, dam up streams, divert water, and leave an immense amount of trash once they've done cultivation and moved on.
The state has identified 200 illegal grow sites for cleanup. Work will begin early next year. The internationally renowned Chilean author Isabel Allende was in San Diego last night to promote her latest book, In the Midst of Winter. The book follows 3 characters, including 2 immigrant women fleeing violence as their lives intersect after a car accident. She sat down with KPBS Frontiers reporter Jean Guerrero to discuss everything from gender violence to immigration, topics she explores in her book.
I'm not sure if you're aware, the prototypes for Trump's border wall were just built here in San Diego. I don't know if you're planning to visit them. What are your thoughts about the current wall that we have in comparison with the wall that is being planned?
It's interesting that in the world that we live today, everything is global. Technology, communication, information, drugs, guns, everything except people. People are contained. People have to be within borders. Nothing else is.
In the Midst of Winter is so relevant in the U.S. right now, given the current immigration debate. 2 of the characters are immigrants, one from Guatemala, one from Chile. Their stories unfold within the context of current events. You wrote, quote, "Xenophobia toward Latinos was already in the air, unleashed by Donald Trump's hateful presidential campaign," end quote. Why did you choose to place the characters in this landscape?
By the time he became president, I had finished the book. Yet the issues that he gave a megaphone to, xenophobia, racism, misogyny, all that, was in the air. It was there. And if he picked it up, so did I and many other people. He didn't invent anything. He just harvested sentiments that were there always. And they are there in every society. We are no exception. The thing is that as we evolve to a better world, these things are kept under control, these sentiments and this hatred. And then sometimes, given the wrong circumstances, it emerges. But the tendency is toward more comprehension, more understanding, more inclusion, more democracy.
As such a prominent Latin American writer living in the United States, do you feel a greater urgency given your role to comment on current events like these?
I don't try to preach in my books or to give a message, but I write about the things I care for. And these issues are things that I deal with in my foundation. Immigration, for example, refugees.
You've fought for women's rights for decades through your foundation and in your books. I want to ask you your thoughts about the Me Too movement. What do you think is accomplished by telling these stories that raise awareness about the ubiquity of gender violence?
Well, we can relate to personal stories. If we talk about numbers, for example, immigration or sexual harassment, if we talk about the millions of women that have been harassed, doesn't mean anything until we see a face and we hear a story, and then we can relate to that. In my book, In the Midst of Winter, I deal with immigration, illegal immigration. And when we talk about those issues in the United States, we talk about numbers in abstract. These are people. Each person has a story, a name, a face. And when through a story we can relate to that person, everything changes. We see it differently. So what's happening today here with this movement and these women that are coming out, they are for the first time making men accountable. And that is something that will change probably the way we understand gender relationships in the United States and by extension in many other places in the world. I think it's very important.
You've actually said before that the only way to change the world is to empower women and also to nurture feminine energy in men. How do we accomplish the latter?
Educating men, young men, and I think the old men, we have to wait until they die off. There's nothing we can do about them. But the young ones, women that, like you and me, are bringing them up. So everything is changing, and we know that it is changing because in my lifetime, I have seen a big change. The generation of my son is very different from mine, and my grandchildren totally different too.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn pleads guilty to lying to the FBI about Russia contacts. Coming up at 7, right after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Taking a look at December nights, now at Balboa Park. It's a weekend for food, music, and dazzling lights. Cooler nights also add to the tradition. Jeff Cornish has tonight's forecast.
We have a pretty decent weather pattern. Fairly pleasant weather will be with us for the first part of the weekend. Tonight into tomorrow, no major weather hurdles when it comes to the San Diego area. Now, with that said, we're becoming increasingly concerned about rip currents for the surfing crowd and anybody out there on the water, especially as we get into Saturday night and Sunday. We will turn much cooler, or at least a bit cooler, near the coast into Sunday. And again, the changes aren't going to be dramatic, but it will be a bit of a dip in our temperature. Satellite radar shows that there have been some showers into parts of southern Arizona. We are rain-free in and around the San Diego metro. To the north, there is some moisture flinging onshore, and the storm track really does keep the extra rain and mountain snow well off to the north. That's more of an issue for Washington and parts of Oregon. So tonight, a moonlit sky, 55 for your low, looking pretty good out there. And as we turn the page to the details here, we'll get down to 46 in Oceanside, 51 up into Long Beach, Borrego Springs 51 as well, Mount Laguna a little cooler there at 40 degrees, Campo about 41. Will be mild but pleasantly quiet across most of the region on Saturday, except for those rip current concerns that will be increasing. You can see the moisture gets a little closer, but it's still well north of the Bay Area, way up in the northern parts of California. So we're on track for 70 into Oceanside on our Saturday, and San Diego 69, a little cooler out there. Into Borrego Springs 80 degrees, Mount Laguna 60, and there will be some snow. Good news for the skiers. You're going to be traveling maybe 800 miles northeast of here or north of here into the beginning of this holiday season. That's good news, but there's obviously no snow on a local scale. When we look at the coastal forecast, again, 70 into the partly sunny afternoon Saturday. A little cooler on Sunday, about 2 degrees cooler. Lots of sunshine into Monday and Tuesday. We'll have occasional low clouds, but they're not going to be that stubborn, with a pretty good setup winning out. Inland areas, 76 Saturday, cooling down to 71 Sunday. Then we bounce back into the mid-70s and eventually 81, a warming trend for Wednesday. The mountains drop into the upper 40s, then we bounce back into the mid-50s. And then into the deserts, we're running a little cooler Monday and Tuesday. I'm Jeff Cornish, KPBS News.
Now back to December nights. The holiday festival marks its 40th anniversary this weekend. We have everything you need to know on how to navigate it on kpbs.org. KPBS Arts Calendar Editor Nina Guerin is at Balboa Park with more.
Hi, I'm at December Nights, the 2-day holiday extravaganza at Balboa Park. All around there's lights, there's music, there's things to do, but a favorite is to see all of the free entertainment happening throughout the park. One of those is from San Diego Civic Youth Ballet. They do excerpts from the Nutcracker all weekend long. And with me is Molly. Hi, Molly.
Hi.
Can you tell me why San Diego Civic Youth Ballet participates in this event?
Yes, so the ballet, we actually open our full run of the Nutcracker next weekend. And this is an opportunity for us to reach a different audience, an audience that all the people that come to December Nights have an opportunity to see an excerpt of what they could buy tickets for next weekend. Or if they're not a ballet fan or a patron, this is an opportunity for us to reach a new audience that otherwise would not be coming through our doors.
And so how many years have you participated in December Nights?
It's a good question. I would say minimum 10 years. I would say we've been doing this for as long as I can remember. I've been with the organization 6.5, so I would say 10 years. The organization's been around since 1945.
Wow. Well, as you can see, they are performing Waltz of the Flowers. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Wonderful. And along with Waltz of the Flowers, there's also singing performances, there are other ballet schools, there's tap, jazz, everything. Another favorite at Balboa Park's December nights is the international food over at the International Cottages. You can get Swedish meatballs, latkes, everything from around the world. And so I want to thank you, Molly, for being here with me today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And for KPBS, I'm reporting from December nights. Back to you, Ebony.
You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. We leave you with one more look at December nights in Balboa Park. Thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend.